Good evening, and welcome to the Sleep to Lore series. Tonight, we journey into the rich and intricate world of the Wheel of Time, a realm shaped by destiny, prophecy, and an immense force of creation. We will be exploring the very heart of this world's magic, the One Power and its two distinct, inseparable halves, Saidin and Saidar. If you enjoy these deep dives into lore and find them relaxing, please consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a like to help others find our stories. It helps immensely. Before we begin, I have a question for you all. Based on what you know or what you imagine, if you could safely touch the One Power, which half would you find more fascinating to wield? The calm, embracing sea of Saidar, or the raging, powerful torrent of Saidin? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, find a comfortable position. Let the world outside fade away. Let us begin our exploration of the power that turns the wheel itself. Part 1. The true source and the duality of power. In the beginning and in the end, and in all the moments that turn between, there is the wheel. The Wheel of Time, as it is known, is a colossal, cosmic loom. It has 7 spokes, each representing an age, and as it rotates, it weaves the fabric of reality. This fabric is called the pattern of the ages, an impossibly complex tapestry that is the sum of all lives, all moments, all choices. The threads of this tapestry are the lives of men and women, spun out and woven together according to the grand design. But what drives this wheel? What is the energy that turns this great loom and allows the threads to be woven? That energy, that fundamental force of the universe, is the One Power. It flows from a limitless wellspring known as the true source. The true source is not a place you can visit, nor an object you can hold. It is an infinite potential, the engine of creation itself, existing outside of time and the pattern. It is utterly pure, impossibly vast, and cannot be depleted. No matter how many people draw upon it, for 1,000 years or 10,000, it remains full. It has no will, no consciousness, no agenda. It is simply a force, like gravity or the passage of time, but a force that can be touched, held, and wielded by those with the ability. This is the first great truth of the One Power. It is a tool. It is not good or evil. The power itself is neutral. The wielder, the channeler, is the one who determines its purpose. A river can be used to water crops, or it can be used to flood a village. The river itself does not care. So it is with the One Power. Yet, this singular, immense force is not monolithic. The true source is divided into 2 halves, 2 distinct and separate parts that are forever intertwined, forever opposite, and forever necessary for balance. These 2 halves are named Saidin and Saidar. They are the male and female aspects of the One Power, the yin and the yang of creation. They work in tandem to turn the wheel and weave the pattern, yet they can never truly touch. A man who can channel the One Power can only ever touch Saidin. A woman who can channel can only ever touch Saidar. This is not a matter of choice or training. It is a fundamental law of existence, as absolute as the rising of the sun. For a man to attempt to touch Saidar would be like a fish trying to breathe air. For a woman to attempt to touch Saidin would be like a bird trying to swim in the deepest ocean. They are different elements, different states of being, though they both come from the same true source. The way they are accessed, the way they feel, and the philosophy required to wield them are worlds apart. It is in this duality, this essential and unbreakable division, that the history of the world, its greatest triumphs and its most devastating tragedies, is written. Understanding this difference is the key to understanding everything that follows. It is the core of the world's magic, its societies, its wars, and its salvation. Let us first explore Saidar, the female half of the One Power. The traditional analogy, the one taught to young novices in the White Tower for 3,000 years, is that of a river. But to truly grasp its nature, one must expand upon that image. Imagine not just a river, but a vast, warm, and endless ocean of life. It is deep and calm, its currents moving with a serene and irresistible force. To a woman who can channel, Saidar is a constant presence. Even when she is not actively touching it, she can feel it just beyond her senses. A comforting hum of existence, a promise of vitality. To draw upon it, to channel Saidar, a woman cannot simply take it. That is the way of the other half, the way of Saidin, the other half, the way of Saidin. To attempt to seize Saidar is to be repulsed by it. It will slip through her fingers like water, leaving her with nothing. The key to wielding Saidar is to surrender. This is not a surrender of weakness or defeat. It is a profound and active surrender of the self. A woman must open her soul, release her anxieties, her anger, her resistance, and allow the power to flow into her. She must become a vessel, inviting the tide of Saidar to fill her. Imagine a young woman, a novice, standing in a quiet training room. She's told to empty her mind, to focus on a single point, a candle flame perhaps. She must let go of her own will, her desire to command, and instead, embrace a feeling of acceptance. For days, perhaps weeks, nothing happens. She tries to force it, to pull the power to her, and feels only frustration. But then, one day, she truly lets go. She surrenders, and in that moment, she feels it. It begins as a tingling warmth, a blossoming sensation that starts in her core and spreads through every inch of her body. It is a feeling of utter oneness, of being connected to every living thing. The power flows into her, not as a raging force, but as a gentle, inexorable tide. It is bliss. It is life itself, concentrated and pure. She feels as though she could embrace the entire world, heal every wound, and make every flower bloom. Once she is filled with Saidar, she does not command it. She guides it. The power wants to be used. It wants to create and to act. Her role is to weave its flows, to gently direct the currents into the shapes and forms she desires. She becomes a part of the river, using her will to steer its course. This is why the act of using the one power is called weaving. She pulls threads of Saidar and weaves them together into a specific pattern, a weave, to create an effect. The feeling is intoxicating, a connection to the very act of creation. The more of Saidar a woman draws, the more intense this feeling becomes. It is a constant temptation to draw more and more, to lose oneself completely in that blissful state of oneness. This is one of the first and most important lessons a channeler of Saidar must learn: control. She must learn to take in only as much as she needs for her task, and no more. To draw too much is to risk burning out, a catastrophic event where the channeler is severed from the true source forever, or even killed by the sheer volume of power. The discipline to surrender to the power, but not be consumed by its beauty, is the mark of a trained channeler. This philosophy of surrender and guidance permeates the societies of female channelers. They think in terms of circles, of connections, of cooperation. They understand that true strength comes not from domination, but from becoming part of a greater flow. The power of Saidar is immense. It can heal the most grievous of wounds, calm the most violent storms, and compel the earth itself to obey. But it is always achieved through this principle of yielding, of working with the power rather than against it. A woman does not tell the wind to stop. She weaves flows of air and spirit to create a barrier of stillness, persuading the wind to part around her. She does not force a wound to close. She weaves flows of spirit, water and air to convince the body to heal itself at an impossible rate. It is a partnership between the channeler and the very energy of life, and for those who wield it, it is a constant, beautiful, and deeply personal relationship with the fabric of existence itself. This connection is so profound that women who can channel can often feel each other's presence. When another woman embraces Saidar nearby, it is not a sight or a sound, but a distinct feeling. It is a resonance, a sense of another person joining the same great current. They can feel the strength of the other channeler, a soft glow of power that is unique to them. They can link together, forming circles where they pool their connection to Saidar. allowing them to wield amounts of the power far beyond what any one of them could handle alone. In a circle, one woman leads, guiding the combined flows drawn by all the others. This act is the ultimate expression of the philosophy of Saidar, a group of individuals surrendering their egos to become a single, cooperative whole, a conduit for a power greater than themselves. This sense of shared experience, of being part of a global sisterhood connected by this beautiful, life-giving force, is a cornerstone of their identity. They are all daughters of the same river, swimmers in the same ocean. But this serene and life-affirming power is only one half of the story. For every principle of Saidar, there exists a violent, contradictory opposite in its twin. The other half of the true source is a world away in feeling, philosophy, and consequence. This other half is Saidin. Now we turn our attention to Saidin, the male half of the one power. If Saidar is a vast, warm ocean, Saidin is a raging, unstoppable torrent of cosmic fire and ice. It is a river of molten rock and frozen glaciers grinding against each other in a chaotic, deafening roar. It is pure, untamed power, violent and utterly without restraint. It does not want to be guided. It does not want to cooperate. It wants to obliterate. It wants to consume. And for a man who can channel, this terrifying, exhilarating force is the only source of power available to him. He cannot feel Saidar. The serene ocean of the female half is a complete blank to his senses. All he knows, all he can ever touch, is the storm. The philosophy of wielding Saidin is the absolute opposite of wielding Saidar. A man cannot surrender. To open oneself to Saidin, to invite it in, would be suicide. The raw, untamed power would scour him from existence in a heartbeat, burning his soul to ash. To use Saidin, a man must seize it. He must reach into that chaotic torrent with his will, grab hold of it, and fight it. It is an act of utter domination, a constant, desperate battle for control. Imagine a man who has just discovered he can channel. He does not feel a gentle warmth. He feels a building sickness, a violent roiling in his gut. The world seems to tilt, and he is suddenly aware of this raging power just beyond his perception. If he is to use it, he must consciously make a choice. He must harden his will, focus his entire being, and attack the power. He forces his way into the stream, and the moment he makes contact, the battle begins. The feeling is not of oneness and bliss. It is a feeling of being filled with filth and glory all at once. The power of Saidin rushes into him, a torrent of incredible force that threatens to tear him apart from the inside. It is a feeling of immense power, a godlike strength that makes him feel as though he could level mountains with a gesture. But at the same time, it is a feeling of deep violation. The power is fighting him every step of the way. It resists his control. It pushes against his mental walls. It tries to flood his senses and drive him mad with its sheer chaotic energy. He must constantly wrestle with it, forcing it into the weaves he desires. He does not persuade the earth to move. He seizes flows of earth and fire and smashes them against the ground, commanding it to break. He does not gently guide the wind. He rips a piece from the storm of Saidin and hurls it at the air, forcing it to do his bidding. The strain of this is immense, both mentally and physically. A man wielding Saidin is a man at war, not with an external enemy, but with the very power he is using. His life depends on his ability to dominate it. The moment his concentration wavers, the moment his will weakens, Saidin will surge and consume him. This constant conflict shapes the men who wield it. They must be forged of iron will, disciplined and unyielding. The struggle against Saidin's chaos forces them to be masters of control. Yet, the allure of it is just as strong as that of Saidar, if not stronger. The sheer, raw power is addictive. The feeling of containing and directing a hurricane inside your own body is a rush unlike any other. Men who channel Saidin are often tempted to draw more and more, not for a feeling of bliss, but for a feeling of ultimate strength and dominion. And the risks are just as great. Drawing too much Saidin does not just burn a man out, it can cause him to be annihilated in an explosion of uncontrolled power, as the force he failed to master finally breaks free. The inherent violence of Saidin also affects how male channelers interact with the world and each other. Their power is based on conflict and control, and this can often be reflected in their personalities. They are more attuned to struggle, to dominion, to the act of imposing order on a chaotic universe. Unlike female channelers, who can feel each other's soft glow, a man feeling another man channel Saidin nearby senses something very different. It is not a gentle resonance. It is a feeling of struggle, of power being forcibly contained. They can sense the other man's battle, the strength of his will pitted against the chaos of the source. It can create a sense of rivalry, of measuring one's strength against another. But it can also create a bond of shared experience, a mutual respect for a fellow soldier in the same unending war. When men link, it is a different process than when women do. One man takes the lead, and others subordinate their will to his, allowing him to draw upon their strength and seize a much larger portion of Saidin. It is less a cooperative circle and more of a command structure, a reflection of the dominance required to master the male half of the power. These two forces, Saidin and Saidar, are the fundamental building blocks of the one power. One is an act of acceptance, the other an act of defiance. One is a partnership, the other a conquest. One feels like life, the other feels like a battle for survival while holding the power of a supernova. For a time, in a long-forgotten age, these two halves existed in a delicate balance. Men and women, Aes Sedai of both halves, worked together. They could not touch each other's power, but they could weave their results in harmony. A man might use Saidin to violently rip a foundation from the bedrock, while a woman would use Saidar to gently smooth the stone and raise it into an elegant wall. Together, their opposite natures created wonders. They were two sides of the same coin, and together they were whole. But this balance was not destined to last. A shadow would fall upon the world, and in its wake, the raging river of Saidin would become something far worse than just chaotic and dangerous. It would become poison. The glorious, terrifying battle for control would become a slow, inevitable descent into madness and damnation. The ability to channel the one power is not something that can be learned by anyone. A person must be born with the potential. This potential manifests in two primary ways. The first, and rarer of the two, is to be born with the spark. A person with the spark will inevitably touch the one power at some point in their life, usually during late adolescence or early adulthood. It is not a choice. The connection to the true source is an innate part of them, and one day it will awaken. This awakening is often a traumatic and dangerous event. Without training, the first touch of the power is uncontrolled and terrifying. For a young woman with the spark, it might manifest as a sudden, overwhelming feeling of euphoria and connection, causing her to inadvertently affect the world around her. Flowers might bloom out of season, milk might spoil, or emotions of those nearby might be heightened. It is often accompanied by sickness, headaches, and a sense of being overwhelmed as her body struggles to cope with the influx of Saidar. If she is not found by someone who can teach her to control the flow, this uncontrolled channeling will eventually kill her. The power will build within her like a pressure until her body can no longer contain it. For a young man with the spark, the first touch is even more violent. He will suddenly feel the raging torrent of Saidin, a chaotic storm in his mind that he has no idea how to fight. He will likely fall into a high fever, racked with chills and nightmarish visions. The power will lash out through him, undirected and destructive. A barn might catch fire for no reason. A sudden localized earthquake might shake his home. He is at the center of a maelstrom he cannot comprehend. Like his female counterpart, if he is not found and taught, he is doomed. The constant, unwilled battle against Saidin will wear him down. and eventually, the power will consume him in a final, devastating release. This innate, unavoidable connection makes those with the spark both powerful and vulnerable. They often have a greater potential for strength in the one power, but their early years are a perilous journey. The second way, to have the potential, is more common. A person can be born with the ability to learn to channel. This person will never touch the true source on their own. They can live their entire life without ever knowing they possess this latent gift. The door to the one power is there, but it is locked. Only through conscious effort and dedicated teaching can they learn the key to open it. For a woman, this means being taught the meditative techniques required to surrender, to open that inner door, and allow Saidar to flow into her for the first time. For a man, it means being taught how to build the mental walls and forge the iron will necessary to reach out and seize Saidin without being destroyed. People with this latent ability are generally safer, as they are not at risk of being consumed by an uncontrolled awakening. However, it also means that countless individuals with the potential to channel have lived and died throughout history without ever discovering their gift. The societies that train channelers, therefore, spend a great deal of effort seeking out not only those who have had their spark awaken, but also those who possess the latent ability to be taught. They understand that the one power is a resource, and every potential channeler, whether born with the spark or not, is a valuable addition to their ranks. This fundamental difference in how one comes to the power creates a distinction within the communities of channelers. Those who had to be taught often look upon those with the spark with a mixture of awe and caution, recognizing their raw potential, but also the inherent wildness of their connection. This brings us back to the great schism between Saidin and Saidar. Even though both men and women can be born with the spark or the ability to learn, the nature of the power they touch defines their path. A woman who learns to channel enters into a world of shared connection. She can feel the presence of other women who channel, sharing in the current of Saidar. A man who learns to channel enters a world of isolated struggle, a solitary battle he wages within himself, even if he is surrounded by others doing the same. But what does it truly mean that they cannot touch the other's half? It is a sensory void. A woman standing next to a man who is channeling an immense amount of Saidin would see the results. She would see the ground split open, the air shimmer with heat, the raw physical manifestation of his power. But she would feel nothing of the power itself. To her senses, where the torrent of Saidin should be, there is only a strange emptiness, a hole in the world. It can be a deeply unsettling feeling, the proximity to a vast and dangerous power that is completely alien to her own being. Conversely, a man standing before a woman weaving intricate flows of Saidar would see the effects. He might see a terrible wound knit itself closed, or a complex illusion shimmer into existence. But he would not feel the serene flow of Saidar that she is guiding. He would sense a fullness, a completeness in her that he cannot access. He is aware that a different kind of power is being used, but its nature, its texture, its feeling are all a complete mystery to him. This separation is absolute. It is the great dividing line of the magical world. It ensures that no matter how powerful a man becomes, he can never truly understand the experience of a female channeler. And no matter how wise a woman becomes, she can never comprehend the internal war that a male channeler must fight. They are two halves of a whole, destined to work in parallel, but never to intersect. This duality is the source of balance, but it is also the source of misunderstanding, of conflict, and ultimately of a cataclysm that would shatter the world and poison one half of the very power that gives it life, turning the glorious struggle of Saidin into a curse that would haunt mankind for millennia. Part 2. The Way of Saidar, the Aes Sedai and a Wider World. We have spoken of Saidar as a great and placid ocean, a current of life that must be embraced rather than commanded. It is a power of surrender, of becoming one with a force greater than the self. Now, we shall explore the societies and traditions built around this unique philosophy. For thousands of years, women who can touch this half of the true source have shaped nations, guided kings, and preserved knowledge through the darkest of times. Their methods and beliefs differ, shaped by the lands they inhabit and the histories they have endured, but they all draw from that same endless, feminine river of power. The most prominent, the most powerful, and certainly the most well-known of these societies is the Aes Sedai of the White Tower. To understand them, one must first understand their home, for the White Tower is more than just a building. It is the very heart of their power and identity. It stands on an island called Tar Valon, nestled in a bend of the mighty river Erenin, one of the greatest rivers in the world. The island itself is situated just downstream from the ominous, solitary peak of Dragon Mount, the volcanic mountain where the last dragon of the Age of Legends died. The city of Tar Valon is a marvel, its outer defences known as the Shining Walls, impossibly high and smooth, gleaming in the sun, rumoured to have been built with the One Power itself. Great arching bridges, constructed by the legendary Ogier builders, span the river, connecting Tar Valon to the mainland. These bridges are masterpieces of stonework, so graceful they seem to defy their own weight. The city within the walls is clean, orderly, and beautiful, a centre of trade, learning, and power for the entire continent. And at its very centre, dominating the skyline, is the White Tower. The tower is a structure of breathtaking beauty and scale. It is not built of blocks or bricks, but appears to have been carved from a single seamless piece of pearlescent white stone. It soars into the sky, elegant and flute-like, its surface shimmering with an inner light. It is a beacon of hope, a symbol of order in a world often consumed by chaos. It was here, in the chaotic aftermath of the breaking of the world, that the first Aes Sedai gathered. With the world shattered by the madness of their male counterparts, these women took it upon themselves to create a bastion of stability. They sought to gather the scattered remnants of old knowledge, to guide the new, fledgling nations that were rising from the rubble, and most importantly, to ensure that the horrors of the breaking would never be repeated. The White Tower became their fortress, their library, their university, and their seat of government. For 3,000 years, it has stood as the undisputed centre of magical authority in the world. Kings and queens send their children to be educated there. Armies halt their marches at its borders. Its influence is felt in every court and every council across the land. And it is from here that the Aes Sedai watch the world, weaving their own threads into the great pattern. The journey to becoming an Aes Sedai is long, arduous, and designed to forge a woman into a figure of immense discipline, control, and wisdom. It begins when a girl or young woman is brought to the tower, either because she was found to have the ability to learn, or because her innate spark for the One Power has awakened, marking her as a danger to herself and others. Upon entering the tower, she sheds her old life and becomes a novice. Novices are the lowest rank. Their lives a simple and strict routine of chores and lessons. They dress in plain white wool, a symbol of their unformed state. Their days are filled with scrubbing floors, carrying water, and serving the full sisters, tasks designed to teach humility and obedience. But their most important lessons take place in quiet chambers with a full Aes Sedai as their instructor. It is here they are taught the most fundamental and difficult skill of all: how to touch Saidar. The process is a deep and personal struggle against one's own instincts. A teacher will instruct the novice to empty her mind, to focus on a single object, like the petals of a flower or the flame of a candle. She is told to let go, to release her grip on the world and on herself. For many, this is an impossible task. They try to force the power, to reach for it, as one might reach for a rope, and they feel nothing. They are told that Saidar cannot be taken, it can only be accepted. The novice must make herself an empty cup, waiting to be filled. This can take weeks, months, even years of frustrating failure. She may feel the tantalizing presence of the power, that warm ocean just out of reach, but be unable to bridge the gap. Then one day, in a moment of true calm, of genuine surrender, it happens. A warmth blooms within her, a feeling of pure life and joy that spreads through her entire being. She has opened the door. She has touched the true source. This first touch is a moment of profound transformation. The world seems brighter, more vibrant. She feels connected to everything, a part of the great flow of existence. It is a feeling of ecstasy, and it is here that the second lesson must be taught: control. The desire to drink deeper from that endless well of power is almost overwhelming. The instructor must teach the novice to draw only a small amount, to hold it, and then to release it. She must learn to manage the flow, to use Saidar as a tool without being swept away by its blissful current. Once a novice has mastered this basic control, her real education begins. She learns the 101 small weaves for everyday tasks. A weave to create light, a weave to warm a cold drink, a weave to clean dust from a table. She is taught the basics of the 5 different threads of the one power that are more prevalent in Saidar: air, water, and spirit. With lesser affinities for fire and earth, she learns to distinguish the feel of each thread and how to weave them together. This period of her life is one of intense study and strict discipline. The rules for novices are many and harsh, and punishments are meted out for any infraction, all to reinforce the absolute necessity of control in a person who can wield such immense power. When a novice has shown sufficient skill and discipline, she is judged ready to take the next step. She is tested for the rank of accepted. This test is one of the most guarded secrets of the White Tower. The novice is taken to a special chamber deep within the tower, where she must face a terrangreal, an object of the one power from the Age of Legends. This terrangreal consists of 3 large silvery arches. To pass the test, she must walk through each arch alone. Each time she enters an arch, she is transported into a world of illusion, a projection of a possible reality. In the first arch, she faces a version of her past, forced to relive a painful memory and demonstrate that she has moved beyond it. In the second, she faces a version of her present, where her fears and desires are made real, testing her resolve and her dedication to the tower. In the third and most dangerous arch, she faces a possible future, a life she could have if she chose to leave the tower, tempting her with love, family, and a normal life. In each of these worlds, she must hold fast to her identity and her desire to be Aes Sedai, navigating the visions without getting lost in them. Many do not return from the arches. They become trapped in the illusion, their minds broken. But if she emerges from the third arch, having faced her past, her present, and her future, she has passed the test. She is then raised to the rank of accepted. She trades her plain white dress for a white dress, with 7 bands of colour at the hem, representing the 7 ages. And she is given a great serpent ring, a gold ring in the shape of a serpent biting its own tail, the ancient symbol of eternity and the wheel of time. As an accepted, she has more freedom. She can choose her own areas of study, delving into the vast knowledge stored in the White Tower's library. She is no longer subject to the same menial chores and harsh discipline of the novices, but she is still a student, honing her skills and deepening her knowledge of the one power, preparing for the final and most binding step of her journey. The final test to become a full Aes Sedai is as demanding as the test for accepted, but it is a test of power rather than will. The accepted must demonstrate her ability to weave complex patterns of the one power under immense pressure, proving she has the raw strength and the fine control necessary to bear the title of Aes Sedai. If she succeeds, she is brought before the Amirlin seat, the leader of all Aes Sedai and the keeper of the chronicles. Here, she must perform the ceremony that will define the rest of her life. She must take the 3 oaths, binding herself upon a powerful terrangreal known as the Oath Rod. The Oath Rod makes any vow sworn upon it magically and physically unbreakable. Once an oath is taken, she is incapable of going against it, as if her body and mind were rewired. The 3 oaths are ancient and absolute. The first oath is, to speak no word that is not true. This does not mean an Aes Sedai cannot lie. They become masters of misdirection and carefully worded truths. They can allow someone to believe a falsehood, but they cannot speak a direct, literal untruth. This oath alone makes them figures of trust and suspicion in equal measure. The second oath is, to make no weapon with which one person may kill another. This prevents them from using their vast power to create implements of war, a direct response to the horrors of the Age of Legends. The third and final oath is, never to use the one power as a weapon, except against servants of the Dark One, or in the last defense of her life, or the life of her warder, or another Aes Sedai. This oath is the great check on their power, preventing them from using it for petty squabbles or wanton destruction. The act of taking these oaths has a profound physical effect. The magical binding settles into their features, giving them a look that is described as ageless. An Aes Sedai of 25 and an Aes Sedai of 250 can look nearly the same age, their faces smooth and composed, their eyes holding a depth of calm and authority that sets them apart from ordinary people. Once the oaths are sworn, the woman is officially an Aes Sedai. She is now free to choose her Aja. The Ajas are the 7 distinct factions within the White Tower. They are not merely social clubs. They are different philosophies, different approaches to the purpose of an Aes Sedai in the world. Each Aja has its own internal leaders, its own secret traditions, and its own goals. The choice of an Aja is for life, and it determines the path an Aes Sedai will walk. Upon choosing, she is given a shawl fringed in the colour of her Aja, the final symbol of her new station. She is now a full sister, a wielder of Saidar, a servant of the White Tower, and one of the most powerful and influential women in the world. Her long education is complete, and her life's work has just begun. The 7 ages of the White Tower each represent a distinct facet of the Aes Sedai purpose. While all sisters are bound by the 3 oaths and a duty to the tower, the ages are where their individual passions and talents find a home. A sister's Aja is her family, her political party, and her life's mission all rolled into one. The choice is deeply personal and is said to be a reflection of a woman's innermost nature. Let us first consider the Blue Aja. The Blues are dedicated to righteous causes and justice. They are perhaps the most involved in the politics and affairs of the world outside the tower. A Blue sister might spend decades away from Tar Valon, acting as an advisor to a king or queen, subtly guiding a nation towards a just and stable path. They are masters of strategy and manipulation, not for personal gain, but for the greater good as they see it. They maintain vast networks of informants and agents, their eyes and ears, scattered throughout the nations, keeping them informed of political shifts, potential conflicts, and the rise of influential individuals. They are often seen as schemers and plotters by the other ages, but the Blues believe that the world is a complex game of power, and to effect positive change, one must be willing to play the game. Their purpose is not to rule, but to guide the rulers of the world towards wisdom and peace. They are often at the heart of major world events, their invisible hands steering the course of history. In contrast to the politically minded Blues are the sisters of the Brown Aja. The Browns are scholars, historians, and librarians. Their primary dedication is not to the present, but to the past. They believe that knowledge is the most valuable treasure in the world, and their life's work is its preservation and discovery. The Great Library of the White Tower is their domain, a repository of knowledge unequaled anywhere in the world. A Brown sister might spend her entire life translating a single, crumbling manuscript from a forgotten language, or undertaking a long journey to find a lost philosophical text. They are often perceived as absent-minded and detached from the real world, their heads forever buried in books. While it is true that they care little for the day-to-day squabbles of kings and merchants, their work is vital. They are the memory of the world, preserving the lessons of history so that past mistakes are not repeated. They are the keepers of prophecies, the chroniclers of the ages, and without their tireless efforts, the wisdom of centuries would be lost to dust. Then there is the White Ager. If the Browns are dedicated to knowledge, the Whites are dedicated to logic and truth. They are philosophers and mathematicians seeking to understand the world through reason and rational thought. They deliberately distance themselves from emotion, believing that feelings cloud judgment and obscure the path to pure logic. A White sister's conversation can be frustratingly precise and devoid of passion. They analyze every problem as a logical puzzle, breaking it down into its component parts to find a clear, unambiguous solution. Their pursuit is abstract, focusing on the nature of reality, the meaning of the pattern, and the philosophical underpinnings of the universe. They are the thinkers and theorists of the Tower. While other Agers might see them as cold and unfeeling, the Whites believe they are pursuing the highest possible calling, to understand the why of existence itself, using the pure, unblemished tool of logic. The Yellow Ager offers a starkly different philosophy. Their focus is on life and restoration. The Yellows are the healers of the White Tower. While most Aes Sedai have some knowledge of healing weaves, the Yellows have refined it into a high art. They are driven by a deep compassion and a desire to mend what is broken. They run the infirmaries within the tower and often travel the world to offer their services during times of plague or war. A Yellow sister can knit torn flesh, mend shattered bones, and purge the deadliest of poisons from a body. Their skill with the One Power is a testament to the life-giving nature of Saidar. They push the boundaries of healing, constantly seeking new weaves to combat new sicknesses and injuries. Theirs is a path of profound empathy, a direct and tangible way of using the One Power to lessen the suffering in the world. They are often seen as the kindest and most approachable of the sisters, their Ager defined by a deep and abiding love for all living things. The Grey Ager walks a path between the philosophies of the others. The Greys are the diplomats and mediators of the world. Their purpose is to find consensus, to negotiate treaties, and to avert conflict through peaceful means. When two nations are on the brink of war, a Grey sister might be sent to arbitrate a solution. They are masters of persuasion, compromise, and law. They understand that truth is often complex, and that most conflicts arise from misunderstanding and pride. A Grey's greatest skill is to find the common ground between two opposing sides and to build a bridge of understanding. They travel extensively, serving as advisors in legal disputes, helping to draft laws for new nations, and acting as impartial judges. Their work is slow, patient, and often thankless, but they are the weavers of peace, their efforts preventing countless wars and saving innumerable lives through the power of words and wisdom rather than the power of force. Standing in stark opposition to the peaceful Greys is the Green Ager. The Greens are known as the Battle Ager. Theirs is a philosophy of readiness. They believe that a time is coming, the last battle against the forces of the Dark One, and it is their duty to be prepared for that war. They dedicate themselves to martial pursuits, studying the arts of combat, strategy, and tactics. They are warriors, and they see the One Power as their greatest weapon. The Green Ager is unique in that they are the only Ager that, as a rule, bonds more than one warder. A warder is a man bonded to an Aes Sedai, a magically enhanced warrior who serves as her guardian and companion. Most sisters bond only one, if any. Greens often bond several, considering them partners in the fight to come. They are often seen as more lively and passionate than other sisters, more in touch with the world of men and the realities of combat. They are a standing army, forever training, forever vigilant, waiting for the day when they will be the world's last line of defense against the shadow. Finally, there is the Red Ager. The Red Ager has one single, all-consuming purpose: to find men who can channel the One Power and stop them. In the wake of the breaking of the world, when the madness of male channelers destroyed civilization, the Red Arja was formed to ensure such a catastrophe could never happen again. They believe that any man who can touch Saidin is a danger, a walking disaster waiting to unfold. They hunt these men relentlessly. When they find one, they gentle him, a process where they use the one power to sever his connection to the true source. This act saves the world from the man's potential madness, but it is a devastating fate for the man himself, often leaving him a broken shell, dead inside. The Reds are defined by this grim task. They are often seen as hard, unforgiving, and even cruel. They hold a deep-seated distrust of men in general, and are the only Arja that does not bond warders. Their mission isolates them from the rest of the world, and even from their fellow sisters, but they see their work as a sacred and terrible necessity. They are the wardens of the world, protecting it from the single greatest threat it has ever known. These 7 ages, with their distinct colors, goals, and philosophies, create a complex and dynamic society within the White Tower. They are often rivals, competing for influence and power, yet they are all united under the authority of the Amirlin's seat, the woman they elect from among their ranks to lead them all. The White Tower, for all its power and history, is not the only place where the traditions of Saidar are kept alive. Beyond its walls, in cultures far removed from the politics of the Westlands, other women have found their own ways to touch the source and have built their own societies around its power. Far to the east, across a great mountain range, lies a vast and arid desert known as the Isle Waste. This harsh and unforgiving land is home to the Isle, a society of warrior people who live by a strict code of honor known as Jieto. Within this society, the most respected and powerful figures are not the clan chiefs, but the Wise Ones. The Wise Ones are the female spiritual leaders of the Ale clans. Many, though not all, of them have the ability to channel. Their relationship with the One Power is vastly different from that of the Aes Sedai. They have no formal tower, no rigid hierarchy of novice and accepted, no binding oaths sworn on a magical rod. Theirs is a much more primal, intuitive, and natural connection to Saidar. For the Ale, the ability to channel is not something to be feared or overly structured. It is a gift from the Creator, a tool to be used for the good of the clan. A young Ale woman who shows the ability is not sent away for years of training. She is apprenticed to an older Wise One, learning through observation and direct experience. She learns the weaves necessary for survival in the waste, how to find water deep beneath the sand, how to heal the sick and injured, how to ease a difficult childbirth, and how to read the signs of the weather in the desert sky. The Wise Ones do not see themselves as separate from their people, as the Aes Sedai often do. They are integral parts of their communities, serving as advisors, judges, and healers. Their authority comes not from an institution, but from the wisdom and respect they have earned over a lifetime of service. Their understanding of the One Power is also different. They have developed weaves and skills unknown to the White Tower, passed down through generations of oral tradition. One of their most remarkable and unique abilities is their mastery of Tel'aran'rhiod, the world of dreams. Tel'aran'rhiod is not the world of ordinary dreams, but a separate, cohesive reality that connects the dreams of all people. It is a world where the landscape is a reflection of the waking world, but it can be shaped and changed by a strong will. While some in the White Tower know of its existence, the Wise Ones treat it as a second home. They have learned to enter the world of dreams consciously while they sleep. They use it as a place to meet and confer with Wise Ones from other distant clans, allowing them to communicate across hundreds of miles in an instant. They use it to seek knowledge, to find those who are lost, and to test the mettle of their apprentices. This deep connection to the dream world gives them a perspective on reality that the more structured and worldly Aes Sedai lack. They are dreamwalkers, seers, and keepers of ancient wisdom, their power deeply rooted in the harsh, beautiful land that shaped them. Another equally powerful, yet entirely different tradition of Saidar exists upon the world's oceans. The sea folk, or Athan Mier, are a reclusive and proud people who live their entire lives upon ships, plying the coastal trade routes. Their society is built around a rigid clan and caste system, and their culture is steeped in tradition and secrecy. At the very pinnacle of their society are their channelers, the windfinders. The ability to channel is far more common among the sea folk than among land dwellers, and it is a gift they treasure and guard jealously. The power of a windfinder is the lifeblood of the sea folk people. Their primary skill, as their name suggests, is an unparalleled mastery over the weather. A skilled windfinder can summon a wind on a dead calm day, filling the sails of their ships and allowing them to outrun pirates or rival merchants. She can calm a raging storm, protecting her fleet from destruction. She can weave clouds to bring rain or weave them away to bring sun. This ability gives the sea folk an enormous advantage in trade and naval warfare, and it is the foundation of their wealth and power. Like the Ael, the sea folk have their own system of training, completely independent of the White Tower. A young woman who can channel is taken under the wing of the windfinder of her ship and taught the complex weaves of wind and water. Their hierarchy is strict, based entirely on one's strength in the one power. The stronger a windfinder is, the higher her rank. The leader of all the sea folk is not a king or an admiral, but the mistress of the ships, who is always the most powerful windfinder of her generation. The sea folk are famous for their ability to form large circles, linking their power together to perform truly monumental feats of weather control. A circle of windfinders on a flagship can create a gale that spans for miles, driving an entire fleet at incredible speeds, or they can create a massive, impenetrable wall of fog to hide their movements. They hold their knowledge closely, viewing the Aes Sedai of the White Tower with a mixture of respect and suspicion. They see the tower's practice of sending away any woman who can channel, regardless of her strength, as wasteful. Among the sea folk, if a woman is too weak to become a full windfinder, she is taught what she can handle and still serves a useful purpose. No drop of potential is ever wasted. These three great traditions, the Aes Sedai, the Wise Ones, and the Windfinders, showcase the incredible diversity in the use and philosophy of Saidar. The same power, the same endless ocean, is viewed through three different lenses: the structured, political, and knowledge-seeking lens of the White Tower, the intuitive, spiritual, and community-focused lens of the Wise Ones, and the pragmatic, hierarchical, and power-based lens of the Windfinders. Each tradition believes their way is the correct one. Each holds secrets the others do not, and each contributes their own unique thread to the great and complex tapestry of the world. They are the guardians of the female half of the true source, the keepers of a power that is beautiful, life-giving, and unlike its twin, pure. Part 3. The Tragedy of Saidin, the Taint and the Breaking of the World. To understand the tragedy that befell Saidin, we must first cast our minds back to a time that has long since passed into myth and legend. We must speak of the age before the White Tower, before the breaking, before even the memory of war. The wheel of time turns, and ages come and go, leaving memories that fade. What was once history becomes legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. So it is with the Age of Legends. The stories that remain are fragmented, like shards of a beautiful mirror, each piece reflecting only a fraction of a brilliant, lost whole. But by gathering these shards, we can piece together a vision of what the world once was, and in doing so, we can understand the sheer scale of what was lost. The Age of Legends was not an age of kings and castles, of swords and banners. It was a civilization that had reached a pinnacle of progress and peace that is nearly impossible for us to comprehend. It was a global society united without the need for a central, overarching government, because the very concept of war between nations had been forgotten for centuries. People lived in harmony, not just with each other, but with the planet itself. The cities of this era were marvels of art and engineering. They were not sprawling, chaotic masses of stone and wood, but elegant, sweeping structures that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. Towers, slender and impossibly tall, pierced the clouds, gleaming with a light of their own. Buildings were often constructed with the one power, their forms flowing and organic, without seams or joints. Parks and green spaces were woven into the very fabric of the urban landscape, ensuring that nature was never far from the lives of the people. There was no pollution, no grime, no poverty as we would understand it. The one power provided for every need. It lit the cities, powered their transport, and purified their water and air. Objects we would consider magical were commonplace. A cooler in every home kept food fresh indefinitely. A glow globe provided light without heat or flame. Communication was instantaneous across any distance through standing flows of the one power, a network that connected the entire world. Sickness was all but eliminated. Healers, both male and female, could mend injuries and cure diseases that would be a death sentence in later ages. People lived long, healthy lives, often for several hundred years, their bodies remaining strong and vital well into their final decades. This extended lifespan gave them a different perspective on the world, one of patience, long-term thinking, and a deep appreciation for learning and the arts. Life was not a desperate struggle for survival, but a long and fulfilling journey of discovery. The greatest marvels of the age were born from the cooperation of men and women who could channel the one power. In this time, they were all known as Aes Sedai, a title from the old tongue that meant simply servants of all, and serve they did. They were not rulers who commanded from on high, but respected guides, healers, researchers, and builders who dedicated their long lives to the betterment of society. The central governing body of the Aes Sedai was a great assembly hall in the magnificent city of Paradisen, known as the Hall of the Servants. From here, they coordinated projects on a global scale. There was no fear of men who could wield the one power. Saidin was understood to be dangerous and volatile, a raging river that required immense strength and discipline to control. But the men who wielded it were seen as pillars of society. They were strong, resolute, and capable of incredible feats of power. Their natural affinity for the threads of earth and fire made them master builders and shapers of the land. They worked in perfect harmony with their female counterparts. Imagine a great construction project. A male Aes Sedai would seize Saidin, that torrent of raw force, and use it to lift a mountain of bedrock from the earth, the ground shaking with the raw power he commanded. Then, a female Aes Sedai, filled with the calm, life-giving flow of Saidar, would take that raw stone and gently, precisely, shape it into the graceful walls of a university or the delicate span of a bridge. One was the raw force of creation, the other was the fine artistic control. Together, they were capable of anything. Their combined efforts could even alter climates, turning deserts into fertile farmland and calming the most violent of weather patterns. Travel was another area transformed by their power. While the common person might use a public transport system of magnetism and air, Aes Sedai and other high-ranking individuals used personal vehicles called show wings. These were small, flying craft, often shaped like graceful birds or fish, that responded to the thoughts of the user, allowing for swift and silent travel through the skies. For greater distances, Aes Sedai used the talent of traveling, a weave that allowed them to open a gateway from one location to another, stepping through to cross a continent in a single stride. It was a world of wonders, a utopia built on peace, knowledge, and the balanced, harmonious use of the one power. At the zenith of this age stood a man named Luz Therin Telemon. He was the most powerful channeler of his time, perhaps of any time. He wore the ring of Tamerlin, a symbol of his station as the first among servants, the chosen leader of the Hall of the Servants. He was respected, admired, and loved by all. His power in Saidin was like a force of nature, yet he was known for his wisdom, his compassion, and his dedication to the people he served. He was a symbol of everything the Age of Legends represented: strength tempered by responsibility, power used for creation, and a deep and abiding peace. This was the world as it stood, a perfect world. And it was this perfection, this endless quest for knowledge and improvement, that would ultimately lead to its doom. The Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends were brilliant, but in their brilliance, they carried a seed of hubris. They believed there were no mysteries they could not unravel, no challenges they could not overcome. The beginning of the end came not with an invasion or a rebellion, but with a scientific experiment. For all the wonders of the One Power, it was still divided. Only women could touch Saidar, and only men could touch Saidin. A team of brilliant Aes Sedai researchers, working at a colossal research university near the city of Visain, hypothesized the existence of a new, unified source of energy. They believed there was a different power, an energy that was not divided by gender, which could be drawn upon by anyone and everyone. If they could tap this source, it would revolutionize their society all over again, making the One Power accessible to all. The project was led by a gifted female researcher named Mierin Eronaile, along with her male colleague Baidamon. They focused their efforts on a point in the fabric of the universe where this new power seemed to be the strongest. Using a complex array of terrangrial and a massive combined weave of Saidin and Saidar, they prepared to drill a tiny hole, a bore, into the fabric of the pattern itself to tap this promising new source. They succeeded. They drilled the hole. But the power they found was not a new, clean source of energy for creation. They had not drilled into a new wellspring of power. They had drilled into a prison. At the dawn of time, when the Creator forged the wheel and spun the pattern, there was another force, an entity of pure, malevolent, and cosmic evil. This entity, known as Shaitan, or the Dark One, was the antithesis of creation. It was a force of entropy, of nothingness, of eternal oblivion. The Creator, in the act of creation, had sealed this entity outside of the pattern, beyond the touch of time, in a prison from which it could never escape. The researchers, in their arrogance and their ignorance, had just drilled a pinhole into that prison wall. This hole, forever after known as the bore, did not release the Dark One. His prison still held. But it gave him a window, a point of contact with the world. For the first time since the moment of creation, the Dark One could touch the pattern. He could whisper into the minds of men and women. The effect was not immediate, not a sudden cataclysm. It was slow, insidious, a poison seeping into the heart of a perfect world. At first, it manifested in small ways. A wave of societal decay began to spread. People became more selfish, more prone to anger and cruelty. Acts of violence, once almost unheard of, became more common. A subtle wrongness crept into the world, a shadow falling over the hearts of humanity. The utopian society began to unravel from within. The Aes Sedai were baffled. They could not understand the source of this decay. They named this spreading darkness the Shadow. The Dark One's influence grew stronger. He began to whisper promises to those who would listen. He offered power beyond their wildest dreams. He offered immortality, a true and eternal life, not just the extended lifespan they already knew. He promised to remake the world in their image, to break the endless cycle of the Wheel of Time, a cycle some had come to see as a pointless trap of death and rebirth. Many were tempted by these promises. Some of the most powerful and respected Aes Sedai in the land, men and women who had been heroes and leaders, fell to the allure of the Shadow. They saw in the Dark One a chance to seize the power they felt they deserved, to break free from their role as mere servants. These individuals became known as the Forsaken. There was Ishmael, a brilliant philosopher who believed that the struggle between the Creator and the Dark One was eternal, and that the only true escape was the final oblivion the Dark One offered. There was the researcher Mierin Eronaile herself, who, consumed by jealousy and a lust for power after being spurned by Luz Therin Telemann, took the name Lanfear, daughter of the night. There were a dozen more, each with their own reasons for turning to the Shadow, greed, envy, nihilism, a simple thirst for power. They swore their souls to the Dark One, and in return, he granted them immense power and authority. The societal decay turned into an open war for the fate of the world. The War of Power had begun. The War of Power was a conflict of unimaginable horror. The world had not known organized warfare for thousands of years. The very concepts of military strategy and weaponry had been lost to time. Now, they were forced to rediscover the arts of destruction, and the tools at their disposal were the very forces of creation. The Forsaken led the armies of the Shadow. These armies were not composed of human soldiers alone. The Dark One and his most twisted servants, like the depraved scientist Agenor, began to create monstrous creatures in foul pits near the focal point of the Boar, a place called Sheol Ghul. They took human and animal stock and warped them with the One Power, creating legions of shadow spawn. The most numerous were the Trollocs, huge, brutish beasts that were a horrifying blend of human and animal features, such as the horns of a goat, the beak of an eagle, or the snout of a boar. They were strong, vicious, and bred for war. They were commanded by the Murdral, or Fades, creatures that looked like pale, eyeless men, whose cloaks did not stir in the wind and whose gaze could paralyze a man with fear. Their presence was a pocket of chilling cold, and they were master swordsmen and tacticians. In the skies flew the Drakkar, leathery-winged humanoids whose mournful song could lull a victim into a stupor, allowing them to descend and drain the very soul from their bodies. These armies of nightmare creatures, led by the immortal and brilliant Forsaken, crashed against the unprepared forces of the light. The war lasted for decades, tearing the world apart. Cities that had stood for centuries were annihilated in the blink of an eye. The Aes Sedai of the light were forced to turn their knowledge of creation towards destruction. Weaves that were once used to build were now used to kill. New and terrible weaves were invented, weapons of mass destruction that warped the fabric of reality itself. The most terrible of these was balefire. Balefire was a bar of liquid white light that, upon striking a target, did not just kill them. It burned their thread clean out of the pattern, erasing them from existence backwards in time. If a person was hit by balefire, not only did they die, but their actions for the past few moments or even hours were undone. It was a weapon so horrific, so dangerous to the integrity of the pattern itself, that both sides began to use it with increasing recklessness, threatening to unravel the very fabric of reality. The world became a battlefield of demigods. The Forsaken Samael was known for leveling entire mountain ranges. The cruel Semiahage devised new forms of torture using the One Power, and leading the forces of the light, holding back the tide of darkness through sheer will and power, was Luz Therin Telamon. He was chosen by the Hall of the Servants to be the supreme commander of the forces of light. They granted him the ancient title of the Dragon. He was no longer just the first among servants. He was the world's champion, its last great hope against the Shadow. For years, the Dragon fought the Forsaken to a standstill. He was a brilliant general and the strongest channeler on the field. He defeated his old friends and colleagues one by one, his heart breaking with each victory against those who had betrayed the light. But the war was a stalemate of attrition. For every victory the light won, the Shadow would unleash some new horror. The world was bleeding to death. Civilization was crumbling. The forces of the light were slowly being ground down. Despair began to set in. Luz Therin Telamon, seeing the endless slaughter and the slow, agonizing death of his perfect world, knew that a conventional victory was impossible. The only way to win was to cut off the head of the snake. They had to seal the Boar. They had to cut the Dark One off from the world once and for all. He devised a daring and incredibly risky plan. He proposed to gather a force of the most powerful male channelers and strike directly at Sheol Ghul, the nexus of the Dark One's power in the world. There, at the mouth of the Boar itself, he would lead them in weaving a patch of pure One Power, a seal that would mend the hole in the pattern and restore the Dark One's prison. It was a plan of breathtaking audacity. Many in the hall of the servants were horrified. A powerful faction of female Aes Sedai, led by a woman named Latra Posai de Cume, argued vehemently against the plan. They believed it was reckless in the extreme. To wield that much raw Saidin, the chaotic and violent male half of the power, so close to the raw essence of the Dark One, was to invite a catastrophe of unknown proportions. They feared that the Dark One could somehow corrupt the weave, or worse, corrupt the power itself. Latra Posai and her followers proposed an alternative. They had been constructing a special set of sangreal, immensely powerful artifacts that amplified a channeler's ability. This plan required the use of two of the most powerful sangreal ever made, one attuned to Saidin and one to Saidar. It would require a circle of the strongest men and women working together. Their plan was safer, more stable, but it had one critical flaw. It would take far too long to prepare. The access keys to the sangreal were not yet complete, and the war was being lost now. Luz Therin could not accept the delay. He saw the world dying around him and believed that any risk was worth taking to end the bloodshed. This disagreement created a great schism between the male and female Aes Sedai. Unable to come to a consensus, Luz Therin made a fateful decision. He would proceed with his plan, with or without the support of the women. He gathered to him 100 of his most trusted male companions, all of them powerful Aes Sedai, who had fought beside him throughout the long, bloody war. These men would be remembered in history as the 100 Companions. Trusting in their strength and the purity of their cause, they prepared for the final, desperate gambit. Without telling Latra Posai or her followers, Luz Therin and the 100 Companions linked their power, drawing upon a truly colossal amount of Saidin. Then, using a gateway, they travelled directly to the slopes of Shayol Ghul, into the very heart of the enemy's power. The battle at Shayol Ghul was an epic of power beyond mortal comprehension. The sky turned to fire as the 100 Companions fought off the forces of the shadow. At the centre of it all was the dragon, Luz Therin Telamon, a figure of blazing light, holding the vast and complex weave together. They poured unimaginable amounts of Saidin into the bore, weaving the 7 threads of the one power: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, into an intricate patch for the pattern. The Dark One fought back, his non-physical power battering their minds, trying to break their concentration. The Forsaken who were present at Shayol Ghul threw everything they had at the dragon and his companions, but they held. Luz Therin's will was like iron, and his power was unmatched. He completed the weave. The seal, made of pure essence, slammed into place, mending the hole in the universe. The Dark One's connection to the world was severed. The war was over. The light had won. In the instant of his defeat, as his prison was made whole again, the Dark One unleashed one final terrible act of vengeance. It was not a physical attack. It was not a wave of destruction. It was a counterstroke of pure metaphysical evil, a backlash of unimaginable filth, aimed directly at the conduit of power that had imprisoned him. It struck Saidin itself. At that moment, every man in the world who could channel felt it. The raging, chaotic river of Saidin, the glorious and violent power they had fought to master, was suddenly changed. A foul, greasy, sickening corruption was smeared across its entire breadth. The pure fire and ice of the power was now mixed with a viscous, oily taint of absolute evil. The clean struggle for control was gone. Now, to touch Saidin was to be filled not just with power, but with the very essence of the Dark One's corrupting influence. For Luz Therin and the surviving 100 Companions at Shayol Ghul, standing at the epicenter of this counterstroke, the effect was instantaneous and absolute. Their minds shattered. They were driven utterly and horribly insane in a single terrifying moment. The victory had been won, but the price was beyond all reckoning. The male half of the one power was tainted, perhaps forever. The consequences of this taint were swift and apocalyptic. Luz Therin Telamon, the dragon, the savior of the world, was the first to fall. In his madness, he could no longer distinguish friend from foe, love from hate. He saw enemies everywhere. He turned the immense power of Saidin upon his own home, his own family. He murdered his wife, Ilyena, his children, his friends, every person he had ever loved, leaving a trail of death and destruction in his wake. For this, history would give him a new name, Kinslayer. In a moment of twisted cruelty, the forsaken Ishamael, who was only partially trapped by the seal, appeared before Luz Therin. He used the One power to temporarily heal the dragon's madness, granting him a few moments of perfect, horrifying lucidity. In those moments, Luz Therin understood exactly what he had done. The grief and horror were so absolute, so soul-crushing, that he fled to a secluded spot, drew more of the One power into himself than any human body could possibly hold, and annihilated himself in a cataclysm of energy. The backlash of this act created a massive, towering volcano that would forever be known as Dragon Mount. The savior of the world had died a monster, and his torment was only the beginning. Across the world, every male channeler began the slow, inevitable descent into madness. The taint on Saidin worked like a creeping poison of the soul. Every time a man channeled, he drank a little more of that poison. It manifested in different ways. Some men were plagued by horrific visions, seeing monsters and enemies in the faces of their loved ones. Others heard whispers in their minds, the voice of the Dark One urging them to kill and destroy. Many were overcome with a deep, rotting paranoia, believing that everyone was plotting against them. Some developed a physical decay, a creeping blackness that would cover their skin as their bodies rotted while they were still alive. And some, in their madness, became convinced that they were the Creator reborn, with the power and the right to unmake the world, and they had the power to do it. These were the most powerful men of the Age of Legends, men who could reshape continents. Now, they were insane, their immense power untethered from reason or sanity. One man might sink an entire peninsula into the ocean in a fit of pique. Another might raise a new mountain range, shattering the land for 1,000 miles. They redirected rivers, causing catastrophic floods that drowned entire nations. They boiled seas, changing the climate of the entire globe. Civilization, which had barely survived the war of power, now collapsed completely under this new onslaught. This was the breaking of the world. It was not a war. It was a 300-year-long natural disaster, an age of pure, unrelenting chaos fueled by the madness of the very men who had once been society's greatest protectors. Billions of people died. The great cities of the Age of Legends were destroyed, their knowledge lost. The very face of the planet was rewritten. Continents were shattered and reformed. Humanity was driven to the brink of extinction. Small pockets of survivors huddled in caves or ruins, struggling to stay alive while the world tore itself apart around them. The female Aes Sedai, whose power remained pure and untouched, did what they could. They saved whomever they could, gathered what scraps of knowledge they could find, and fought a desperate losing battle to preserve some remnant of civilization. The breaking only ended when the last of the male Aes Sedai from that age finally died, his body and mind consumed by the taint. The world that emerged was a shattered and broken place. The utopian past was a forgotten dream. The very geography of the planet was new and terrifying. And a deep, abiding fear was burned into the collective soul of humanity. The fear of men who can channel. The memory of the breaking became the foundation of the new cultures that arose from the ashes. Saidin was no longer seen as one half of a whole. It was seen as a curse. Any man who could touch it was viewed as a monster, a walking embodiment of the apocalypse, doomed to go mad and destroy everything he held dear. This legacy of fear and hatred would last for 3,000 years. It led to the founding of the Red Aja in the newly built White Tower, an entire organization dedicated to the grim task of hunting these men down and severing them from the source of their power. The glorious, balanced partnership of Saidin and Saidar was dead. In its place was a world where one half of the one power was cherished and the other was a source of unrelenting terror, a tragedy that would define the next age of the world. Part 4. The Art of Weaving, the 5 Powers and the Tools of Magic. We have journeyed through the history of the one power, witnessing its majestic balance in the Age of Legends and the terrible tragedy of the Taint that poisoned its male half. We have explored the societies of women who safeguard the purity of Saidar, from the rigid structure of the White Tower to the primal wisdom of the Isle Wise Ones. Now, we must turn our focus from the grand scale of history to the intricate personal scale of the channeler. We will now explore the very mechanics of the one power, to understand how a channeler takes the raw energy of the true source and shapes it into a specific effect. This is the art of weaving. To a non-channeler, magic is a mysterious and often frightening force. It is a flash of light, a sudden gust of wind, a wound that closes as if by a miracle. But to the channeler, it is a precise and demanding craft, as intricate as creating a tapestry and as rigorous as a mathematical equation. They do not simply will things to happen. They must gather the power, separate it into its fundamental components, and then weave those components together in a specific, repeatable pattern. These fundamental components, the threads that make up the fabric of the one power, are known as the 5 powers. They are earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Every single thing that can be accomplished with the one power, from lighting a candle to leveling a city, is done by weaving together flows of these 5 essential elements. To understand the art of weaving, one must first understand the nature of the threads themselves. Let us begin with earth. The thread of earth is exactly what its name implies. It is the power of substance, of stability, of weight and stubbornness. When a channeler draws a flow of earth from the true source, the feeling is one of immense density and unyielding strength. It feels solid, gritty, and immovable. It is a slow and sluggish power, resistant to change. To weave with earth requires great strength of will. One cannot coax it, one must command it. It is the most tangible of the 5 powers, directly connected to the physical world of stone, soil, and metal. The simplest weaves of earth are straightforward. A channeler can use a small thread of earth to lift a single pebble, to smooth a rough patch of ground, or to find a vein of ore deep beneath the surface. With more power, they can shape a block of stone as if it were soft clay, carving intricate designs or raising a solid wall without a single tool. A master of earth can perform feats that defy the imagination. They can shake the very foundations of the land, creating localized earthquakes that can topple fortifications. They can cause the ground to erupt, throwing massive shards of rock into the air as projectiles. They can part the earth to create a chasm, or raise a plateau where none existed before. In the Age of Legends, channelers strong in earth were the master builders, lifting the foundations for their magnificent cities and shaping the very landscape to their needs. In later ages, this power became a fearsome weapon of war. An army marching across a plain could find the ground suddenly turning to deep mud, swallowing their supply wagons, or they could find a solid, impenetrable wall of stone rising up to block their path. The thread of earth is about control over the solid, the physical, the unmoving. It is a power of foundations and of destruction, as stubborn and as powerful as the mountains themselves. Next, we have air. The thread of air is the complete opposite of earth. It is the power of motion, of freedom, of the intangible and the unseen. To draw a flow of air is to feel a sense of lightness, of slipperiness. It is a fine, almost invisible thread that is difficult to grasp and even more difficult to hold. It is quick, responsive, and constantly in motion. Weaving with air is an exercise in precision and fine control. The most basic use of air is to create a breeze, to cool oneself on a hot day, or to gently push a boat away from a dock. A channeler can use a weave of air to sharpen the edge of a blade, to an impossible keenness, or to carry their voice over a long distance, allowing them to speak to someone a mile away as if they were standing next to them. They can even use a flow of air to listen to the wind, picking up distant sounds that would be inaudible to the normal ear. As a channeler's skill with air grows, so does the scale of their abilities. They can create powerful, targeted gusts of wind capable of knocking a man off his feet or tearing the sails from a ship. They can weave barriers of solid air, invisible walls that are as hard as stone, capable of deflecting arrows or even stopping a cavalry charge. One of the most common and useful weaves is one that insulates the user from heat or cold, wrapping them in a bubble of perfectly temperate air, allowing them to walk through a blizzard as if it were a spring day. The greatest masters of air, like the seafolk windfinders, can control the weather itself. They can weave vast, complex patterns of air and water to summon storms, create cyclones, or banish clouds from the sky. In combat, air is a subtle and deadly weapon. A channeler can rip the very air from an opponent's lungs, or create razor-sharp blades of compressed air that can slice through armor. The thread of air is the power of the sky, the wind, and the breath of life. It is a power of subtlety, of movement, and of invisible force. Then there is fire. Fire is the power of energy, of heat, of light, and of passion. Of all the 5 powers, it is the most visceral and the most direct. When a channeler draws a flow of fire, it is a feeling of raw, untamed heat. It is a living thing, hungry and wild, that strains against the channeler's control, always seeking to burn brighter and hotter. It is a power that is easy to summon, but difficult to master. To let one's control slip for even a moment when weaving with fire is to risk being consumed by it. The simplest weaves of fire are the most common uses of the one power seen in daily life. A small thread of fire can light a candle or a campfire. A slightly larger weave can heat a kettle of water or warm a cold room. A channeler can also create light, from a small floating ball of luminescence to a brilliant flash that can temporarily blind an enemy. The destructive potential of fire is obvious and terrifying. A channeler can hurl balls of flame that explode on impact, incinerating anything they touch. They can create sheets of fire to form a wall, or cause the air itself to ignite in a massive conflagration. One of the most feared weaves in warfare is the lightning strike. By weaving together fire and air in a precise and volatile combination, a channeler can call down a bolt of lightning from a clear sky, a weapon of immense and instantaneous power. The thread of fire is not just about destruction, however. It is also the power of forging and change. A master can use precise flows of fire to melt and shape metal without a forge, or to cauterize a wound in an emergency. In the Age of Legends, fire was used to power many of their devices, a clean and efficient energy source. The thread of fire is the power of the sun, of the heart of a volcano, of pure, untamed energy. It is a power of raw force, of consumption, and of brilliant, dazzling light. The 4th power is water. Water is the power of fluidity, of healing, of cleansing, and of adaptation. It shares some qualities with air, in that it is a flowing and yielding power. But where air is light and quick, water is deep and inexorable. To draw upon a flow of water is to feel a sense of coolness, of a deep and powerful current moving through you. It is a flexible and adaptable power, capable of great gentleness and overwhelming force. Simple weaves of water are often used for practical purposes. A channeler can draw water from the ground where there is no well, purify a contaminated pool to make it safe to drink, or gently cleanse a wound of dirt and debris. They can control the flow of a river, creating a calm spot for a boat to cross, or use a weave of water to move a ship against the current. Water is also a key component in the art of healing. While spirit is the primary power used to command the body to mend, water is the element used to wash away sickness and to soothe pain. Its cleansing properties are essential for restoring a person to health. The power of water on a grander scale is truly awesome. In conjunction with air, it allows for the control of weather, from summoning a gentle rain to creating a torrential downpour or a blinding blizzard. A channeler can lift vast amounts of water from a lake or the sea, creating massive waterspouts or tidal waves that can smash fleets of ships or inundate coastal cities. In combat, water can be a surprisingly effective weapon. A channeler can create jets of water with enough pressure to cut through steel, or form whips of water to ensnare and crush an opponent. They can also freeze water, creating sharp projectiles of ice, or encasing an enemy in a block of solid ice. The thread of water is the power of the ocean, of the rain, of the blood in our veins. It is a power of adaptability, of healing, and of irresistible crushing force. The fifth and final power is spirit. Spirit is the most mysterious and perhaps the most versatile of the five. It is not tied to a physical element like the others. It is the power of the mind, of the soul, of connection, and of life itself. To draw a flow of spirit is a strange and ethereal sensation. It has no temperature, no texture. It feels like a hum, a vibration, a connection to the vital essence of all things. It is the thread that binds the others together, often used as the framework upon which more complex weaves are built. Weaves of pure spirit are subtle and profound. The most common use of spirit is in warding. A channeler can weave a shield of spirit around themselves or a location, a barrier that can prevent others from eavesdropping, or can alert the channeler to an intrusion. These wards can be simple or incredibly complex, layered with different triggers and effects. Spirit is also the power of compulsion and influence. With a delicate weave of spirit, a channeler can subtly influence another person's emotions, calming their anger or heightening their fear. A stronger and much more morally questionable weave can be used to directly command another person, a form of mind control known as compulsion. This is considered a forbidden art by many, as it violates the free will of an individual. Spirit is the primary thread used in healing. It is the flow of spirit that communicates with the body, telling it to fight off disease and to mend its injuries at an accelerated rate. It is also the power that allows a channeler to sense the general well-being or intentions of another person. A full Aes Sedai can often get a feel for a person's character just by being in their presence, a subtle reading of their inner spirit. The most esoteric uses of spirit involve interaction with the soul and the pattern itself. The terrible weave of balefire is woven primarily from spirit. The process of gentling a man or stilling a woman, severing them from the true source, is an act performed with a blade of pure spirit. The thread of spirit is the power of life force, of thought, of will. It is the power that animates the clay, the power that gives consciousness and meaning to the physical world. These five powers are the fundamental colors on a channeler's palette. But simply having the colors is not enough. One must know how to mix them, how to apply them to the canvas. This is the act of weaving. A channeler does not see these threads with their physical eyes. They perceive them in their mind's eye, a flow of distinct energies that they can grasp and manipulate. The process of creating a weave is one of intense concentration. The channeler must first embrace the true source, drawing in the raw power of either Saidin or Saidar. Then, they must mentally separate that raw power into the individual threads they need. They might pull a thick flow of earth, a thin wisp of air, and a steady stream of spirit. Then, with their will, they weave these threads together in a precise sequence, a three-dimensional pattern of energy. A simple weave, like creating a ball of light, might involve only a single thread of fire, twisted into a simple loop. A more complex weave, like healing a serious wound, might require dozens of threads of spirit, water, and air, all woven together in an incredibly intricate and delicate pattern that changes from moment to moment as the channeler diagnoses and treats the injury. The complexity of these weaves is why training is so essential. A novice must memorize hundreds of different weaves, practicing them over and over until the pattern becomes second nature. A mistake in the weave can have serious consequences. A poorly woven fireball might fizzle out, or it might explode in the channeler's face. A botched healing weave could make an injury worse. This is why control and precision are prized above raw power. A channeler with moderate strength who has perfect control is far more effective and far less dangerous than a very strong channeler who is sloppy with their weaves. The concept of weaving is not just a metaphor, it is the reality of how the one power is manipulated. And like a real-world weaver, a channeler can choose to make their work obvious or hidden. Most weaves are plain to see for another channeler. When a woman weaves a barrier of air, another woman who can channel will see the shimmering threads of air she is using. She can analyze the weave, understand what it does, and even figure out how to unravel it. But there is a technique known as inverting a weave that allows a channeler to hide their work. By weaving the pattern inside out and wrapping it in a layer of spirit, the weave becomes invisible to other channelers. The effect of the weave is still present, the invisible wall will still stop an arrow, but the threads that create it cannot be seen. This is a skill that requires a high degree of control and is often used for subtlety and secrecy. An Aes Sedai might place an inverted ward on a room to listen in on a conversation, and no one, not even another channeler in the room, would know the weave was there. This adds a layer of intrigue and paranoia to interactions between channelers, as one can never be entirely sure what hidden weaves might be in place around them. The art of weaving is a deep and complex field of study, one that even the most powerful Aes Sedai can spend centuries mastering. It is a dance of will and energy, a fusion of art and science that allows a single individual to touch the very fabric of creation and reshape it to their design. This intricate art is further complicated by a fundamental difference between the sexes. The duality that defines Saidin and Saidar also extends to the 5 powers. Men and women are not equally adept with all 5 threads. There are natural affinities, inherent strengths and weaknesses that are a direct reflection of the nature of their half of the true source. Men who wield the violent, forceful, and dominating power of Saidin are naturally stronger with the most forceful and destructive elements, earth and fire. The stubbornness of earth and the raw energy of fire resonate with the confrontational nature of their power. A man will generally find it much easier to lift a boulder or throw a fireball than a woman of equal overall strength. It takes less effort, less concentration. The weaves feel more natural in his grasp. This inherent strength shapes the way male channelers tend to approach problems and combat. Their instincts often lead them towards direct, overwhelming applications of power. Why create a subtle trap when you can simply shatter the ground beneath your enemy's feet? Why weave a complex barrier when a massive wall of flame will achieve the same result? Their power encourages a philosophy of domination and brute force. Women, on the other hand, who wield the yielding, flowing, and guiding power of Saidar, are naturally stronger with the more subtle and controlling elements. Air and water. The fluid nature of water and the elusive quality of air resonate with the philosophy of surrender and guidance that is required to touch Saidar. A woman of equal strength to a man will find it far easier to weave the wind, control the weather, or use water for healing. These weaves feel more intuitive to her. This, in turn, shapes the way female channelers approach the world. They tend to favor control, subtlety, and precision over raw force. Why use a hammer when a scalpel will do? Their combat styles often involve misdirection, creating illusions with air and light, using gusts of wind to misdirect attacks, or using barriers and shields to control the battlefield. They are more likely to seek a solution that outmaneuvers an opponent rather than one that simply overpowers them. Spirit, the 5th power, is the great variable. It is the thread of the mind and soul, and both men and women can be exceptionally strong in it. However, it often manifests in slightly different ways. Women, with their more interconnected and cooperative use of the power, often excel at the warding and sensing aspects of spirit. Men, with their focus on control and will, can sometimes be more adept at the more forceful applications, such as binding or compulsion. These are not absolute, unbreakable rules. They are strong tendencies, natural inclinations. A woman can learn to become highly skilled with fire and earth, and a man can learn to master the intricacies of air and water. However, it will always require more effort for them to work against their natural affinity. A woman throwing a fireball will have to concentrate harder and expend more energy than a man of the same power level, performing the same feat. This fundamental difference is another reason why men and women working together in the Age of Legends were so effective. They complemented each other perfectly. The man provided the raw, heavy force, while the woman provided the fine control and complex structure. Together, their strengths covered their partner's weaknesses, creating a whole that was far greater than the sum of its parts. This is a harmony the world has lost, and the imbalance has forced both sides to adapt. Women have had to learn to be more forceful, and the few men who have channeled in secret have had to learn to be more subtle to survive. The gender affinities are a constant reminder of the fundamental duality of the one power, a cosmic truth written into the very threads of magic. Beyond these general affinities, there are also specializations, abilities that go beyond simple skill. These are known as talents. A talent is not something that can be learned in the same way as a standard weave. It is an innate, almost instinctual gift for a particular, highly complex area of channeling. A person with a talent can often perform weaves in their chosen field with a grace and power that others can never hope to match, even if they have memorized the exact same weave. It is the difference between a skilled painter and a born artist. The most common and most valued talent is healing. While almost any Aes Sedai can learn the basic weaves to mend a cut or a broken bone, a woman with a talent for healing can do so much more. She has an intuitive understanding of the human body. When she channels, she can almost feel the sickness or injury, and she instinctively knows the precise combination of spirit, water, and air needed to mend it. She can fight diseases that would baffle others, heal wounds that would be considered fatal, and her work is faster, more efficient, and puts far less strain on the patient. The Yellow Aja actively seeks out women with this talent, as they are the heart of their order. A much rarer and more spectacular talent is that of traveling. The weave for traveling, which allows a channeler to create a gateway to any location they know well, is one of the most complex weaves in existence. It requires the channeler to visualize their destination with perfect clarity and to bore a hole through the fabric of reality itself. Most channelers can never master it. But for a person with the talent, the process is almost second nature. They can open gateways quickly and efficiently, sometimes with just a thought. This ability is a massive strategic advantage, allowing for the instantaneous transport of supplies, information, and even armies. In the Age of Legends, it was a common skill among the most powerful Aes Sedai, but in the Third Age, the knowledge of how to perform the weave was lost for thousands of years, making the rare rediscovery of the talent a world-changing event. Perhaps the rarest and most frightening talent is foretelling. A foretelling is a glimpse of the future, a prophecy spoken by a channeler. This is not a skill that can be controlled or summoned at will. It is a spontaneous event. The channeler's eyes will often glaze over, their voice will change, and they will speak a prophecy, a cryptic and often poetic vision of a future event. Once it is spoken, they often have no memory of what they said. The foretelling is a view of the threads of the pattern, a glimpse of a future that is likely to be. These prophecies are taken with the utmost seriousness, as they are believed to be infallible, though their interpretation is often a matter of intense debate. It is considered more of a curse than a gift, as the channeler is merely a conduit for information they cannot control or understand. The Brown Aja and the Keepers of the Chronicles in the White Tower are responsible for recording and studying these prophecies, trying to decipher their meaning and prepare the world for what is to come. There are many other, lesser-known talents as well. Some people have a talent for finding water, others for soothing animals. The Ale-wise ones have a high proportion of dreamers, those with the talent for entering and manipulating the world of dreams. These specialized gifts add another layer of depth and variety to the world of channelers, ensuring that each individual's relationship with the One Power is unique. Finally, we come to the tools of the trade. The human body is a remarkable conduit for the One Power, but it has its limits. There is only so much of the true source that a person can safely draw at one time without being burned out or killed. To overcome these limits, the Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends created objects of power, tools designed to enhance or focus a channeler's abilities. These objects fall into three distinct categories. The first and most common type are angreal. An angreal is, in essence, an amplifier. It is an object, often made of smooth, unadorned stone, crystal, or ivory, that allows a channeler to safely handle a much larger amount of the One Power than they could on their own. Each angreal is keyed to either Saidin or Saidar, and is useless to a channeler of the opposite gender. When a channeler holds their angreal, it acts as a buffer, a focusing lens that protects their body from the raw surge of the source. A channeler using an angreal can perform feats that would normally be far beyond their natural strength. The amount of amplification varies from one angreal to another. Some might only increase a channeler's power by a small fraction, while others might double or triple their capacity. In the Third Age, these objects are incredibly rare and precious relics from the past. The knowledge of how to create them has been lost, and the White Tower guards its collection of angreal jealously, lending them out only to sisters on the most important of missions. The second category is Saangreal. A Saangreal is simply a vastly more powerful version of an angreal. If an angreal allows you to wield the power of a river, a Saangreal allows you to wield the power of an ocean. They are so incredibly powerful that they are almost too dangerous to use. A channeler of even moderate strength, using a powerful Saangreal, could wield enough of the One Power to destroy an entire city in a single weave. The strain of controlling such a massive flow of power is immense, and a single mistake could result in the death of the user and everyone for miles around. Saangreal are the rarest and most legendary of all the objects of power. Some of the most powerful ones in history were so large they had to be built into the landscape, and their use required multiple channelers working in concert. The two most powerful Saangreal ever created, one for a man and one for a woman, were giant statues that were central to the alternative plan to seal the bore. Like Angreal, the knowledge of their creation is long lost, and they are objects of myth as much as they are physical artifacts. The third and most varied category of objects is Terangreal. Unlike Angreal and Saangreal, Terangreal do not amplify the amount of power a channeler can handle. Instead, they are tools with a specific, pre-programmed function. They are like magical machines. A channeler activates the Terangreal by channeling a small amount of the One Power into it, and the object then performs its specific task. The variety of Terangreal is nearly endless, and their functions range from the mundane to the miraculous. The White Tower has a vast collection of them, many of which they still do not understand. The Oath Rod, which makes the three oaths binding, is a Terangreal. The three silvery arches used to test accepted are a Terangreal. There are Terangreal that can create illusions, Terangreal that aid in sleep and dreaming, Terangreal that can cause pain, and Terangreal that can be used for communication over long distances. Some Terangreal do not even require the user to be able to channel. They react to certain conditions or can be used by anyone. The study of Terangreal is a major focus for the Brown Aja, as each new discovery can unlock a piece of lost knowledge from the Age of Legends. These objects are a tangible link to a forgotten past, a reminder of a time when the understanding of the One Power was so profound that it could be woven into physical objects, creating a world of everyday magic. Together, the five powers, the art of weaving, the natural talents, and the objects of power form the intricate and fascinating system of magic that lies at the heart of this world, a system of immense potential and terrible danger. Part 5. Balance, Cleansing, and the Coming of a New Age. We have traversed a long and often dark road in our journey to understand the One Power. We have seen its two halves, the serene ocean of Saidar and the raging torrent of Saidin, existing in a perfect, creative balance in the forgotten age of legends. We have witnessed the hubris that led to the drilling of the boar, the subsequent horror of the war of power, and the ultimate, terrible counterstroke of the Dark One that poisoned the male half of the true source. We have explored the world that was born from this catastrophe, a world where women who could channel gathered in societies like the White Tower to preserve order, and a world where any man who touched the power was doomed to a slow, inevitable descent into madness and destruction. For 3,000 years, this has been the status quo, an imbalance baked into the very fabric of existence. The world has been limping, functioning on only one half of its true potential, haunted by the memory of what the other half became. But the wheel of time does not stand still, and the pattern it weaves is one of cyclical change. Ages do not last forever. The darkness that fell upon Saidin was not destined to be eternal. Prophecies, ancient and cryptic, spoke of a time when the world would be broken again, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for healing. They spoke of the coming of a figure of immense paradox, a savior who was also the world's greatest threat, the Dragon Reborn. This final chapter of our exploration is about the restoration of balance. It is the story of how lost knowledge was rediscovered, how the most ancient of poisons was finally cleansed, and how the world took its first, hesitant steps into a new and uncertain dawn. A dawn where men and women might once again wield the One Power together as a complete and unified whole. The key to this restoration, the very concept that had to be relearned before any healing could begin, was the art of linking. We have spoken of how the female channelers of the White Tower and the Sea Folk can form circles, pooling their individual connections to Saidar into a single, unified stream of power. One woman takes the lead, and the others surrender their own control of the flow to her, allowing the leader to draw upon their combined strength. This allows them to perform feats far beyond the capabilities of any single individual. A circle of 13 Aes Sedai, the maximum number possible without a man, can weave a shield that is nearly unbreakable or perform acts of healing that border on the miraculous. This practice is a perfect reflection of the nature of Saidar itself. Cooperative, unified, a group of individuals becoming one with the greater current. For the 3,000 years since the breaking of the world, this was the only form of linking known. The very idea of including a man in such a circle was not just forgotten, it was unthinkable. It was a taboo of the highest order. How could you invite the source of the breaking, the embodiment of madness and destruction, into the most intimate and powerful connection a channeler could experience? The fear and hatred of male channelers ran so deep that any knowledge of how to link with them was purged, buried, and lost to time. It was a self-inflicted wound, a necessary amputation performed to save the body of the world, but it left a phantom limb, a sense of incompleteness that no one alive could even identify. The rediscovery of linking with a man was a monumental event, a crack in the foundations of 3 millennia of dogma. The mechanics of it were both simple and revolutionary. When men and women link, the rigid limitations of a single gender circle are shattered. A circle can grow much larger, and the amount of power that can be wielded increases exponentially. A man can be the leader of a circle of women, and a woman can be the leader of a circle of men. The one who leads becomes a conduit for both Saidin and Saidar simultaneously. Imagine a man leading a circle. He still only touches Saidin, that raging inner torrent. He cannot feel Saidar directly. But through the women linked to him, He can draw upon the calm ocean of their power. He can direct their combined flow of Saidar, weaving it together with his own Saidin. For the first time since the Age of Legends, a single mind can consciously direct both halves of the true source in a single unified weave. The reverse is true for a woman leading a circle of men. She remains within her own river of Saidar, but she can guide the raw, chaotic power of the men linked to her, using their Saidin as if it were her own. The feeling of being in such a circle is a profound revelation. For the women, it is a sudden, breathtaking awareness of the sheer, raw power that men have to battle. It is not just a concept learned from books. It is a visceral feeling of a contained inferno, a struggle for control that commands a newfound respect. For the man, it is an infusion of calm, a sense of stability that Saidar provides, which can help him to better control the chaos of his own power. It is a feeling of completeness, a momentary mending of the great schism. In that link, the participants get a fleeting taste of the harmony that was lost, a reminder that these two opposing forces were never meant to be enemies, but partners. This rediscovery did not happen easily. It required a man and a woman to overcome a lifetime of ingrained prejudice and fear, to trust each other completely in the most vulnerable of states. But once it was done, the implications rippled outwards. It meant that the power available to the forces of light was infinitely greater than they had believed. It was the first sign that the old rules were breaking down, that the world was on the cusp of a fundamental change. The ability to link Saidin and Saidar was not just a new weapon, it was a symbol. It was the physical proof that balance could be restored, that the two halves of the whole could work together again. It was the necessary first step, the tool that would have to be wielded to confront the much larger problem, the poison that still flowed through the heart of Saidin. The hope for this ultimate healing did not lie in rediscovered techniques, but in ancient words, in the fragmented and terrifying collection of prophecies that spoke of the dragon reborn. For 3,000 years, these prophecies were the most studied and most feared texts in the world. They were not vague predictions. They were foretellings, spoken by Aes Sedai, who were touched by a talent that gave them brief, involuntary glimpses into the weave of the pattern. These prophecies were believed to be inevitable. They were the roadmap to the future, a roadmap that pointed towards a time of great upheaval, the coming of the last battle, and the return of the world's saviour, who was also its greatest fear. The prophecies surrounding the dragon reborn were a tapestry of paradox and dread. They stated that he would be the reincarnation of the soul of Luz Therin Telemann, the man who had saved the world and then destroyed it in his madness. He would be a man who could channel Saidin, and on a scale not seen since the Age of Legends. Therefore, he was destined to go mad. He was destined to be a figure of immense destruction. One of the most terrifying lines of prophecy stated that with his coming, the world would be broken anew. This was the lens through which the world viewed his prophesied return. He was not a messiah to be welcomed with open arms. He was a force of nature, a hurricane or an earthquake, to be survived. Kings and queens feared his coming, knowing that his presence would upend their power and plunge their nations into chaos. The common people whispered his name in fear, seeing him as a harbinger of the apocalypse. And the White Tower, the institution meant to guide the world, was paralyzed with indecision. The Red Aja, whose entire purpose was to hunt down and gentle men who could channel, saw him as the ultimate target, the greatest threat that must be neutralized at all costs. Other Ajas, like the Blue and the Green, believed he was a weapon, a necessary evil that must be controlled and pointed at the shadow when the time came. They plotted to find him, to leash him, to turn his destructive potential to their own ends. Almost no one considered that he might be a man, a human being with his own will, his own hopes, and his own fears. The prophecies were specific, providing signs and markers for his return. They foretold that he would be born on the slopes of Dragonmount, the volcanic monument to Luz Therin's grief-stricken suicide. He would be a child of the Aiel people, but raised by others. He would carry a sword marked with a heron and would be a master of the blade. He would come to the great fortress known as the Stone of Tyr, a fortress that was said to be impenetrable. And he would take from it the legendary sword that is not a sword, Kalandor, a powerful sangreal in the shape of a crystal blade. He would lead the Ael out of their desert home and unite their warring clans under a single banner. He would make the winds of the world his own. Each of these prophecies, as they came to pass, sent waves of panic and awe through the nations. They were the undeniable proof that the final days were approaching. But for the young man at the center of it all, a shepherd named Rand al'Thor, these prophecies were a cage. He did not ask to be the dragon reborn. He did not want the power that coursed through him, the tainted river of Saidin that made him sick and whispered madness in his mind. He was a young man forced to carry the weight of the world's salvation on his shoulders, while being feared and hated by the very people he was destined to save. His life became a desperate race against time. He had to learn to master an unmasterable power, to unite factious nations, to prepare the world for the last battle, all while fighting a constant, losing war against the creeping taint in his own mind. He could feel the madness growing, the paranoia setting in, the dark thoughts that were not his own. He knew that he could not defeat the Dark One if he became just another madman. The world could not be saved by a monster. Before he could heal the world, he had to heal the power itself. The cleansing of Saidin was not just a strategic goal, it was a personal necessity, his only hope for survival and sanity. The plan for the cleansing was a stroke of genius born of utter desperation. It was a plan that no sane person in the last 3,000 years would have ever conceived, for it involved wielding an amount of the one power that dwarfed even the energies used during the breaking of the world. The core of the plan rested on the use of the two most powerful sangreal ever created, the legendary Chwedan Kal. These were not handheld objects. They were a pair of colossal statues, one of a man and one of a woman, each holding a sphere. They were located hundreds of miles apart, relics of the age of legends so powerful that they could not be used directly. To access their power, a channeler needed a smaller, portable access key, a miniature version of the main statue. The Dragon Reborn had managed to find the male access key, and one of his female companions, a powerful channeler named Nineve, held the female one. The plan was to link, use these keys to tap into the Chwedan Kal, and then use the truly godlike amount of power they could now wield to perform a feat of cosmic filtration. They would seize the entirety of Saidin, from one end of the world to the other, and pull it through a filter woven from pure Saidar. This filter would separate the pure essence of the male power from the greasy corruption of the Dark One's taint. But this raised a critical question. Once the taint was separated, where could they put it? They couldn't just release it into the world. That would be like unleashing a plague of pure evil. They needed a container, a disposal site, that was as foul and as corrupt as the taint itself. The answer lay in a cursed, ruined city in the heart of the land, a place of shadow and fear known as Shadar Logoth. This city had a dark and unique history. In the years after the breaking, during the wars against the Shadow's remaining forces, this city, then called Aridhol, was a bastion of the light. But its people became so consumed by their hatred of the Shadow, so obsessed with defeating it, that they turned to paranoia and suspicion. They began to see enemies everywhere, even in each other. They allowed a dark and hungry evil to be born in their hearts, an evil that was not of the Dark One, but was born of their own hatred. This evil, a shadowy, sentient mist called Mashadar, consumed them all. The city became a place of utter desolation, an evil so profound that it was hostile to all life. Even the creatures of the Dark One, the Trollocs and Myrddraal, feared to enter its walls. Shadar Logoth was a cancer upon the world, an evil that was the polar opposite of the Dark One's evil. One was a corrupting force from outside the pattern. The other was a devouring emptiness born from within it. The Dragon Reborn's audacious plan was to use one evil to annihilate the other. He would funnel the Taint of Saidin directly into the heart of Shadar Logoth, believing that these two opposing evils would destroy each other, leaving nothing behind. It was a gamble on a cosmic scale, with the sanity of every male channeler and the fate of the world hanging in the balance. The day of the cleansing arrived. The dragon reborn and Nynaeve, holding the two small, powerful access keys, stood upon a hill overlooking the dead city of Shadar Logoth. The air around the city was heavy, oppressive, and unnaturally silent. There were no birds, no insects, just a profound and waiting emptiness. Below them, the ruined towers of the city were shrouded in a faint, shifting mist, the physical manifestation of Mashadar. The two channelers reached out to each other and formed a link, a circle of two. At that moment, holding the access keys, they tapped into the Churdan Kal. The sensation was beyond description. Power, raw and unimaginable, flooded into them. It was the power to unmake the world, to move stars from their courses. It was the power of a god, and it took all of their combined will just to contain it, to not be instantly incinerated by its sheer magnitude. The sky for 1,000 miles in every direction turned a strange, shimmering silver as the very fabric of the pattern strained under the weight of the power being drawn. Then they began the weave. The dragon reborn took the lead. He reached out with his mind, not just to the portion of Saidin he would normally seize, but to all of it. He plunged his will into the entirety of the male half of the true source, a river of power that flowed through every corner of the world. He grabbed hold of it and began to pull. He turned himself into a siphon, a living conduit for the entire tainted flow of Saidin. The feeling was agony, the filth, the corruption, the whispers of madness that he fought against every single day were now magnified 1 billion times. It was the concentrated despair and hatred of the Dark One flowing through his soul, threatening to tear his sanity to shreds with every passing second. While he endured this torment, Nynaeve performed her part. She drew upon the equally immense flow of pure Saidar, amplified by the female Sa'angrael, and began to weave the filter. It was a vast and incredibly complex web of air, water, and spirit, a net of pure life and energy. She wove this filter around the dragon reborn, creating a magical membrane. As he pulled the entirety of Saidin through himself, it was forced to pass through her shield of Saidar. The pure essence of the male power, the clean fire and ice, passed through unharmed. But the oily, greasy filth of the taint could not. It was caught in her net, scraped away from the pure power it had clung to for 3,000 years. The separated taint was then channeled away, formed into a thick black river of raw evil, and directed downwards, into the heart of the waiting city below. The moment this stream of concentrated corruption touched the waiting evil of Shadar Logoth, the reaction was instantaneous and cataclysmic. A dome of perfect, impenetrable blackness rose over the city, a sphere of utter nothingness where the two opposing evils were locked in a war of mutual annihilation. There was no sound, no explosion, just a terrifying void that seemed to drink the very light from the sky. The dragon reborn and Nynaeve held the weave, straining against the colossal forces they had unleashed, pouring the endless river of the taint into the waiting abyss. For what seemed like an eternity, they held on, enduring the unimaginable strain. Then, as the last dregs of the taint were scraped from Saidin and fed into the void, the nature of the event changed. The dome of blackness collapsed in on itself, and in its place, a new dome erupted, a dome of brilliant, pure white light. It was the light of 1 billion candles, a pure and holy radiance that was the visual representation of Saidin, finally, blessedly clean. The dome of light expanded rapidly, washing over the land, a silent wave of purification. It was so bright that it was visible from hundreds of miles away, a new star appearing in the midday sky. When the light finally faded, the city of Shadar Logoth was gone. Not ruined, not destroyed, but utterly erased from existence. Where the cursed city had stood, there was now a perfectly circular, smooth bowl in the earth, miles across, scoured clean of any trace of corruption. At that exact moment, every man in the world who could channel, from the youngest boy who had just touched the power to the oldest man on the verge of madness, felt a profound and miraculous change. The constant background sickness in their souls, the nagging whispers, the feeling of inner decay that had been their constant companion, simply vanished. The raging river of Saidin was still there. The struggle to control its immense power remained, but the poison was gone. The battle was no longer against an active malevolence. It was now just a battle against themselves, a struggle of will against force. For the first time in 3,000 years, Saidin was clean. The cleansing of Saidin was not an end to the world's problems, but it was a new beginning. It was a fundamental reset of the world's magical landscape. The single greatest source of terror and division that had defined the modern age was gone. Men who could channel were no longer doomed. This had immediate and profound implications for the entire world. The most significant of these was the change in the nature of the Black Tower. This organization had been founded by the Dragon Reborn before the cleansing. It was a desperate attempt to gather male channelers, to find them before the Red Arja did, and to train them as soldiers for the last battle. It was a grim and fatalistic institution, a place where men learned to wield the power that was simultaneously killing them. They called themselves the Ashaman, a name from the old tongue meaning guardians or defenders. With Saidin now clean, the Black Tower was transformed. It was no longer a military hospital for the terminally ill. It was now a true school of magic for men, a genuine counterpart to the White Tower. Its purpose was no longer just to fight and die, but to live and build. The Ashaman, once seen as the most disposable of weapons, were now the founders of a new tradition, the first generation of male channelers in millennia who could look forward to a future that did not end in madness and death. This created a new and complex dynamic in the world. For 3,000 years, the White Tower had held an absolute monopoly on the legitimate use of the One Power. Now, they had a rival made up of men, the very group they had feared and hunted for their entire history. The initial interactions were fraught with tension, mistrust, and the weight of centuries of prejudice. The Red Arja, whose purpose was now effectively obsolete, was thrown into an existential crisis. The other Arjas had to reckon with the reality that they could no longer dictate the terms of power in the world. But slowly, cautiously, things began to change. The shared goal of defeating the Shadow forced a reluctant cooperation. Aes Sedai and Ashaman began to fight side by side. They began to talk, to share knowledge. The lost art of linking men and women began to be practiced once more, not as a shocking exception, but as a powerful strategic tool. Bonds of friendship, respect, and even love began to form between individual Aes Sedai and Ashaman, creating personal bridges across the Great Divide. The journey towards true balance was slow, difficult, and fraught with setbacks. The fear of men who could channel did not simply disappear from the hearts of the common people overnight, but the foundation for a new world had been laid. The cleansing was the pivotal event that made a different future possible. It was the healing of a wound that had festered for an entire age, and it set the stage for the final confrontation with the Shadow, a battle that would now be fought not by a broken and divided world, but by one that was, at long last, beginning to remember what it meant to be whole.